Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to TrueLife Podcast. I hope everybody is starting their week off with a smile on their face. I hope everybody's starting the week off with the sun shining, the birds singing, the wind is at their back. Maybe you got a silver lining, I don't know. But I'm here with an incredible guest, and we're going to bring to your ears a little something worth listening to. And so if your week is starting off awesome, it's going to get better. And if it's a little bumpy, it's about to get awesome. So I hope everyone will help me welcome Gary Quigley. Got him on the podcast today, and we're honored to have him. Hailing from Southampton, England, weighing in, I don't know what he weighs in at, but he's a champion, I'll tell you that much. He's a seasoned service design transition manager with a focus on aligning ITIL 4 processes with project execution. He's got a bunch of cool stuff under his belt. And we're just going to start talking here, man. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. Gary, how's it going, my friend?
George, absolute pleasure to be here, man. I've moved to London, so that's just a
Oh,
quick update. I was in Southampton, but we can come on to that because it actually comes into the whole story of self-development and growth and all that sort of thing, which I'm a massive proponent and believer in. But yeah, it's going really good. I think we were connected by a mutual friend, Thomas Hutchinson, who's a fantastic individual I met at a biohacking event. And yeah, there's great power in making connections with people in the right times in your life, and that's what's led me here. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
yeah. What was that, the London Connect event or?
No, it was a thing called I think it was just called the Biohackers event or something like that. And it's one of those things, you see it online, sounds interesting. Living in London, you want to take up the kind of opportunities because I'm originally from the Isle of Wight, so it's completely 360 to London. The Isle of Wight's population about 110,000 people. Everyone knows each other. If you've got an ex, you're going to run into her. Basically, that's the way it goes. And yeah, since moving to London, the opportunities are just so vast in what you can do and the access to things that you have. And when that popped up, I was just sort of like, okay, I say I'm about this, I say I'm into this, so I've got to show it. So yeah, I went.
Yeah, that's what it takes. I think that, the path of growth must be chosen over and over again. And it's scary sometimes to hear your heart call or to know that there's something out there for you and then to pursue that path, man. Let's start with biohacking though. Like that's such an interesting topic, whether people are doing nootropics or they're, figuring out ways to do some biofeedback. When I say biohacking, what is it that interests you about biohacking?
So biohacking, as you said, I mean, go in very different areas. It can be from your mind to your body. It's even like to the level of the kind of fabric conditioner that you use. Like if it uses certain chemicals and stuff like that, that can not just
Yeah.
impact your skin, it can impact your thought patterns and stuff. It's a bit wild. I'm not an
Yeah.
expert by any extent, but just I think having the awareness gives you a power and uh, an advantage over like many people. So it's just about getting that awareness of a wide spectrum. So now that I know that, I don't have to know the intricacies of what chemicals. I just need to look on the back and be like, does it have XX that I don't think is right? And on that subject as well, it's like in food today, I don't know if it's the same in America, but in England, we consume 70% of our diet is processed food. And so much of that stuff is like,
Yep.
I have a sort of rule, if I can't pronounce it, I don't eat it. And there's a lot of stuff on the back of processed food that you can't pronounce. And we need to go back to eating things that only have one ingredient, a pepper, a cucumber, a tomato, that sort of thing. They've got those nutrients that we need. So sometimes it's about knowing what's already there for us to take advantage of. And sometimes it's about being shown things that exist in the world that other very intelligent people have created that allows you to take advantage of that technology or that substance or that thing that we're aligned with. So one thing I'm trying recently is something called Shilajit. It's
Mm,
it's just something you mix in your water basically in the
right.
morning with water. Just gives you a bit more mental clarity. I've
Yeah.
tried um, ashwagandha. I've tried a few things, to be honest with you. But it all just sort of comes back to those fundamentals of just wanting to have more clarity, more alignment with your body, mind, and soul, and that's just kind of how I try to live under those three principles, so it doesn't get too complicated, because the world's a very expansive and moving place, and it can be very easy to get bogged down and confused with things. So I'm no expert by any means, but I know enough to direct me and the people that I love in positive directions.
I love it, man. I love the idea of, let's try to see what this machine can do. Not that the
Mm.
body's a machine, but like let's see what the human condition can do when we get all the right fuel in there. And for a long time, like I've been a big proponent of psychedelics for a long time. On some level, I feel as if it opens up your perspective. It allows you to see sort of in a different, I think perspective's the right word, but it's interesting how, at least in my opinion, it's been able to help me understand this thing called shame or understand this thing called anxiety. You know what I mean? And kind of allow you to sneak up on it without having to feel things like that. But yeah, I think psychedelics for me, particularly LSD and like psilocybin mushrooms, have been the two that I've gone to. And it's really helped me figure out a lot of problems that I've had in my life with some generational trauma and some other relationship traumas like that. What's your take? Have you tested out those particular supplements, or what's your take on psychedelics?
LSD, no. Mushrooms, yes. Very briefly, I had some in Amsterdam. It's quite
Mm.
interesting because when I got back, my mum, first thing she said to me is, "Did you do any drugs?" My answer was, "I didn't do anything illegal,"
Right,
because technically that's true if you're in Amsterdam. And they make it's almost like, and this is one of the great things about traveling, where
right.
when you see a different side of the world and how different people perceive things, and you see the history of that, so you find out that the whole kind of history of making Amsterdam, cannabis and mushrooms and everything
Yep.
legal in Amsterdam links back to the church and how taxes and all this sort of thing. But when we would go there, and you can just go into a shop and you look on the menu, essentially you have a menu for these mushrooms. Whereas you take that to England, they don't get a menu, you get some bloke in an alley that has a big coat,
Right.
and then it's very different experience. So you go to the menu and you've got, as you would the normal menu, this is the flavor, this is the taste, these are the effects. It's all like a
Mhm.
star rating. The same with the cannabis, and it was incredibly organized and business focused, and just feels it's just a product basically that's being
Yeah.
used over there, and they see it a different way than we do, and that they utilize it. And yeah, we tried some, and it was interesting. It was a very interesting time actually, because my partner was American at the time, and I was with two English friends, and we'd had cannabis before and stuff growing up, and we were quite used to that effects, but they hadn't. And when we were in the smoke shops and everything, they would smoke and try to get the feeling, and they were getting some high from being in the room, but not really. But then when we had like space cake and stuff like that, you can't, you just eat, and everyone can do that. So yeah, seeing them get high was quite amusing. And then my friend, he went to a cake shop afterwards, and he ordered like three cakes, and I had to stop him and say, "You realise they're just cakes. Like, they're not special cakes. That doesn't translate to everything in Amsterdam." But yeah, that was a really fun time. So yeah, I've had, like many people growing up, I've tried different drugs and things. Mostly just really light stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say I've had honestly some fantastic experiences under those conditions. Because as you said, it opens your mind up, it helps you to be more expressive as a human, and you just drop so many boundaries of
Yeah.
uh, masculinity and um, what's it called, like pride, and you
Yeah.
just let yourself be, you know. And I think it's interesting that things like that are seen as being alternative medicines.
Yeah.
When you look at, like, on a factual basis, how is a pill that's created in a lab that puts in all these different chemical stuff and comes into this little thing like this, how is that an alternative medicine? And the stuff that came from the ground, sorry, yeah, how is that not alternative medicine? And the stuff that came from the ground is the alternative medicine. It's a very weird thing we've been sold, really, and no one really seems to be questioning it. But I question everything. So yeah, I've had some interesting talks about that.
I love the idea of questioning everything. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is this idea of I'm trying to think of the right word. Like, I think on some level, psychedelics for me, they help break the conditioning that most of us have gotten. Like when it comes to the idea of awareness, I think that you can go out for a walk in nature and learn more from a battered coastline or a waterfall than you can in a classroom. Not all the time, but a lot of times. When you go out there, sometimes knowledge is revealed to you. And there's like this sort of organic intelligence. But in today's world, we seem to be on the forefront of artificial intelligence. And I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts on the similarities and differences? And I know they're just words, but how do you see the relationship between organic intelligence and artificial intelligence?
That's a hell of a question.
I love it. Good.
So I think from my perspective, it will be that organic intelligence, basically it's unpredictable in the way that a waterfall hitting a rock reacts differently to, or sorry, water hitting a rock reacts differently to the water hitting the ground, reacts differently to water hitting the person. It's unpredictable in the facets of what happens from one action to the next, and that's I think what the beauty in it is. I mean, we know that water is water, but we don't know how that water is going to cascade and break apart and what's depending on the surface. We can't predict that. But with AI, the idea is it's all so predictable in the way that, and this is actually something I learned recently, so I have been studying it, but it's known as an LLM. So it's a learning language model, I believe, or a large language
Large
model.
language model, yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, I always thought it was connected to the internet, and it's a website that goes out and scans the internet and gives you stuff back. And that's not actually the case. It's something that was built over 12 months, a language that's built over 12 months. That's why its reference points only go back to, I think, 2021. I think, anyway. But because of that, it is, as I said, it's only referencing a database of information that's being created and then bringing that back. And I find that when I use AI, the most effective way I get out of it is when I treat it like a human. So I don't ask it a question to give me an answer. I ask it to give me questions so I can answer those questions. Because then there's multiple layers of touch points that it's going to get that information based on my answers. So it makes it less predictable than it just giving me an answer because it doesn't know what I'm going to answer back. But yeah, I do think it's highly predictable in the way that it just kind of it functions. And again, because it's been built and exists for those 10 months, sorry, it's been built over 10 months, its data set is what's in existence. The data set for the world, organic intelligence, as you say, is thousands of years old. And goes into things that we haven't discovered. I mean, you can spend a day out in the forest, I guarantee, and just spend like 8 hours there. And this is what I think the beauty in life. If you just did that, you'd experience something that no one else in the world had experienced. They're not in. If you're there by yourself in that place, you are experiencing something that no one else gets to experience in that moment in time. I just don't. I think we go through life so busy and distracted that we don't get to resonate with those kind of opportunities anymore. And I do think there's great power in that.
Yeah, that's really well put. I've never thought about it from that angle, but you're right. If you are out there just forest bathing or, doing some sort of sutra or meditating, or just go for a walk or hanging with a friend or something, like, you really get to have this divine moment with yourself and nature that can be, I mean, nothing short of a miracle. It's weird to think about that, but it's really nothing short of a miracle. And yet there's such a lack of spirituality around. How is that even possible, Gary?
I think again, it's I think it's intentional. I mean, I am one of those
Right.
conspiracy theorists. I don't
Yes, me
believe
too.
that there are people in the world that are very powerful, have a lot of money, and I think anyone. Well, basically, the way I see it, if you've got 5 pillars, and I always forget the fifth one, so hopefully I'm not going to do it this time. But you've got influence, money, resources, a good heart, and I knew I was going to get. Then there's another fifth one, but basically you've got a good set of pillars in those, like those foundational pillars. I think you can change the world, because if you're a person with a good heart and you have the resources, the money, the ability, probably that's it, the ability, then you can literally, yeah, go out there and change the world. And there are people that don't want the world to change, because the world changing on a mass scale is a threat to their power, influence, ability to live life how they've enjoyed it. So they give us, processed food, and it's
Mm.
kept in the air. And I mean, there's many different avenues you can go down, but I fundamentally disagree that we are putting this world and everyone has equal footing, basically. I don't think we're educated enough about food. I don't think we're
Right.
educated enough about our minds. I don't think we're educated enough about how people get to where they kind of got to. That even, the principles of, oh, money's dirty, money's bad, money's evil. It's like, again, if you're a good, I have no reservation. I want to be incredibly rich because I know I'm a good person. I know I can help a lot of people. And
Yeah.
right now, my resources only allow me to help a certain amount of people. And the more I can increase my own wealth, my own resources, the more people I can help. How can that be bad? But even saying I want to be rich, you have people be like, oh, well, I don't know about that. No, I'm more, I don't care about money. I care about helping people. Great. You can help more people with money. You can still be moral and have money. There's some of the biggest benefactors, or sort of benefactors, people that give money to charities and of the highest amount, are incredibly wealthy people.
Yeah, it's interesting, the idea of money, and I think that on some level we're seeing that change today. Like, I think maybe the idea of value is changing, and with value comes the change of money on that side of it. But yeah, it does make sense. And I too agree that I if I put on my tinfoil hat, what I see happening is an incredible lockdown of food right now. Like, there is an incredible fight on the forefront of people trying to control food. And if you think about it, if you can control food, you can control everything. I think it was Kissinger's in one of his latest, the one he wrote with Eric Schmidt, a recent book they wrote together, that talked about controlling the food supply is, paramount in setting up any sort of, long form government to control stuff. But what's your take on the ongoing food supply over where you're in neck of the woods? A lot of farmers protesting right now.
Yeah, I've been keeping up on it. There's, I
Oh,
think, in
okay.
France, Germany, and you're right. When it goes back to the source, that's when you really start to kind of think. So we
Yeah.
can live in our, our iPhone worlds and our AI and all
Right.
this sort of stuff, but fundamentally, we are organic organisms that need certain nutrients and food to
Yep.
exist, food and water and the fundamentals. And when that goes away, all this AI stuff, that does mean nothing, because I mean, even if you're
Right.
alive, you don't have the brain capacity to use it. You're not
That's
going to
right.
be able to be very good. And I think it's amazing in the way that it shows just how much power that the people, if you like, of which we are, have. And when they realize that, it's and when other people start to realize that, in terms of, we have the numbers, essentially, we're controlled and governed by entities that often don't have our best interests at heart, lie, corrupt constantly, and we perceive that we can't really do much because they have the power, because they have, authorities, they have police, they have industrial mechanisms behind them. But ultimately, the people have the power because there's more of us.
Yep.
But the problem is, and this is where the whole division comes in, if we were a single mindset, let's say with 7 billion people in the world, let's say it's that, let's say 100 million people out of that 7 billion are bad actors, want the worst of people, they're just bad people. So then you've got 6 point something billion that are good people, want the best of the world, want to do good things. So we can come together as a collective and we said, no, we've had enough of this. Taking over the government, don't like that. You've not been behaving right, been paying you, you're not doing your job, da, 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 da. Take over this, take over this, take over this. And we just basically take our lives back, essentially. We could do that. But
Yep.
the problem is that the mindsets of people are so different, and most people's mindsets are from a place of I don't want to say fear necessarily. I think that's too strong a word, but a lack of understanding of the power that they have, I think would be the
Mm,
nicest way to put it. So people sort of go through and say, okay, I've got from 0 to, let's say, 90 best case scenario. In that time, okay, I want to raise a family, I want to have a wife, I want to do the 2.4 children thing with the mortgage and all this sort of stuff.
yeah.
And then they get to their 60s and they realize their pensions ain't sustaining them. And,
Yep.
loads of their friends have passed away. And they kind of just reflect and think, well, what was my life? What did I do? All this sort of thing. And think I don't think again, I don't think it's by accident that you have these kind of realizations quite late in life, whereas most
Yep.
people will go through
Yeah.
thinking this is life and this is okay and this is this is that. But on every foundational level, we are miracles. Like whether you come
Yeah.
from religious perspective or the science perspective, we're over 1 in a billion chance. The religious perspective, we are God's children. Whatever religion you put inside there, we are ex children or chosen or whatever thing you want to use. I mean, a single cell in our body has so much complex stuff going on, like a single cell.
Yep.
We are incredible human beings. We were not put here to watch Emmerdale and drink beer 5 nights a week and smoke ourselves to death. That it blows my mind, honestly, that people look at their lives, they've got 0 to 90 and what they choose to do with it. And I think part of it is awareness. They make that choice almost unknowingly because they don't
Mhm.
believe in themselves to think of anything better. They think that's not for me, that's for them.
Yeah,
But
I grew up, I went to a public school, and no one ever told me or any of my classmates that there's a path to success where you could retire at the age of 30. I didn't know that. I thought you had to get up and go to work for 40 years, break your back, and it but it does begin to dawn on you. At least it did for me, and psychedelics played a part in that. But you know, if you're just quiet, this goes out to everybody listening, whether you're 5 or 40. Well, if you're 5, you're probably not listening to this. But if wherever you are in life, just look around. Sit by yourself and look around. And you know that feeling of something's not quite right? It's not. Something's not quite right. And if you start looking around, you start seeing signs like, just think about the word culture. What the hell is the word cult doing in culture? You think about that for a minute, like, it's almost like culture's trying to buy you off. Like as soon as you become dangerous, some people become dangerous at 20, some at 30, but a lot of people become dangerous at middle age when they got a little bit of money and their influence begins to weigh, they get to their ideas and opinions are formed and they have a little weight they can throw around. Well, we'll give you just enough money so you're happy. Not too much. We don't want you traveling and doing too much fun stuff. We'll give you a couple kids, we'll put you in debt. And so by the time you have built up enough to throw your weight around, it seems like culture buys you off. And my challenge for everybody listening to this, you're scary, you're dangerous, know it and embrace that and live your life. Don't be like Gary, don't like Gary says, you can get to the age of 60 and that's when people have like this midlife crisis or maybe even earlier, like they realize, what the fuck did I do with my life, man? What did I do? I worked for this company that doesn't care about me. I gave in and I settled for less. Don't settle for less. If you're
yeah,
if you're 20, 30, or 40, make the change right now. Like you can do it. And like you said, like Gary says, you're a miracle, man. You can make these changes. It's not easy, but be one of the people that can, right?
absolutely. And I think one of the big things I would try and put across to people as well is, again, utilize the fact we do live in this time of absolute abundance, right?
Yes.
If you're working a job, let's say you're working in a supermarket or you're working as an accountant, or whatever you're doing, if you're not happy in your job,
Yeah.
I never advocate for someone just to leave their job and go, whole hog and just see if it works. Because the thing is, there's this whole notion of, oh, you've got to put yourself in a stress response, fight or flight, all this sort of stuff. But when you do that and you put yourself in a position where you have financial dependencies and you then you're worried because, oh, I can't
Yeah.
pay my bills because I made this decision, it's not working out. Your cortisol is going to be so freaking high, you're not going to be able to think straight, and
Right.
you're not going to be able to do those big moves. So I don't advocate for that. I say stay in your job, but if you can reserve, let's say, an hour a week, 3 hours a week, whatever, you jump on Udemy, you jump on YouTube, you buy a book, whatever it is. The thing is, Stephen Bartlett said this recently, and it's so true, that success is boring. Basically, the results afterwards aren't boring, but the things you have to do to get there are boring. It's reading a book, it's doing it, it's not doing a course and sticking it on while you're watching Family Guy in the background or anything like that. It's whole, like, locked in. I'm doing this. It's boring as fuck. I want to shoot myself in the head. But this is what I have to do because I need to do the things that other
Yeah.
people don't do because I want to be someone that other people aren't. I want to bring my life to a point that makes people look at me and go, wow, look what Gary's doing.
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, Gary's working with this person, he's going to these events, he's doing this. I want that because I
Yeah.
want to know that I earned it. So yeah, success and growth and all that stuff is incredibly boring and mundane and all this sort of stuff, but it goes back to that thing of stuff that's boring means that you're singularly focused. Because when you're trying to do, we don't actually multitask. We think we do, but we don't. We task switch, and every time we switch to something different, we have a cognitive like almost like an allowance for that. So when you wake up and in your day, you've got a certain amount of cognitive allowance, and this is why Jeff Bezos only wore, not Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs wore the same clothes every day, the polo neck, the jeans, all this stuff, because he didn't have to think about what to wear. So that's less cognitive load. So all these decisions we have to make as we go through life is cognitive load, and it has a cognitive cost.
Yeah.
So the more you can reduce that, the better. And we experience more in a day than people 700 years ago would experience their entire lifetime. So this is the level of pressure and demand on our psyche that we have every single day. And we don't recognize it, we don't realize it, we don't appreciate it. But when you recognize that and you start to like put in systems, and as I said, it's 1 hour a week, 3 hours a week, whatever, but focused on a direction, a goal that's outside of your job, seeing where that can take you, marketing, sales, whatever. And the thing is, with neuroplasticity, those
Mm.
skills will transfer into your job. Those skills will transfer into your life. You become a better salesman, you become better at conversation, you become better at conversation, become better at networking events, become better at networking events, you meet the right people and they want to hang out with you. You meet the right people, they want to hang out with you, they then trust you. They trust you, they give you opportunities. You get opportunities, you see where the path goes, right?
Yep.
And that all started with just doing something like an hour course, 3 hour course, but which doesn't seem related, but it is. Because, as I said, with neuroplasticity, the more you can form neural connections and ways that your brain can do expansive thinking and bring in this element and this element and this element to combine it to make something really powerful, then you start to become a person of influence, become a person of interest to people, and that's when you start to grow and develop.
I love it, man. I heard a sentence recently, and I want to get your opinion on it. And that sentence is, relationships are the new currency. What do you think?
I have a slightly different one.
Okay, let's hear
So
it.
my friend says relationships are the highest form of currency.
I love it. Why?
Completely true. Uh, the thing is, it's the fairy tale, if you like, is that I was ambitious, I was driven, I was motivated, and I made it happen. And I, pulled myself up on my bootstraps, and I went from zero to this point, and everything. This, the reality is, you have to be humble, and you have to say, no, I need help. I'm not a skilled marketer. I'm not a skilled salesperson. I don't have a fantastic network. I don't even know how to network. I need help. As soon as you say I need help, things start to open up because then you come across a person that, let's say, for example, if you had one mindset of I'm going to do it myself, you meet someone at a networking event and you say, oh yeah, it's great to meet that person, but I can't meet them again because I'm focused on my goal and I've got to do my goal and it's just me. So I've got to stay in my office and I've got to do this 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, to make something happen. The reality is, if you allow that person in that again, when you've got an expansive mind, you say, I need help. I met that sales guy. Let's meet with that sales guy for a coffee. Let's talk and get to know each other and see if maybe we can take that somewhere. And all of their contacts, all of their influence, all of their understanding of business and that can not all of it, but that can come across to you, and they may want to help you because again, you've got that trust. You're a good person. You speak eloquently, and all these sort of factors you bring in. But yeah, I mean, for my personal experience, getting a network, being attached to the right people has been exponentially like more beneficial than me trying to do 100 courses in every different facet, because the people are like a rich tapestry of information. And if you go to a book or a course, it's like a single source. It's built and it starts and it stops. It starts and it stops. People don't start and stop. They are different from the day that you meet them to the day you next see them. Like, so many more data points will come in that time. So people are such an incredible resource. I don't mean to describe them as a resource, as like something you could take from them.
Right.
But as a human to human connection, like, we are historically, from our ancestral beginnings, we were in tribes.
Okay.
The tribes worked together to create something. The men built the camp, the women would go cook, the men go out and hunt. But the men, as a group, one man going out to hunt is the death sentence. So if you look at it in the same frame, you going out to hunt, i.e. trying to make something of yourself all on your own, death sentence. So forget, your ego. Like, embrace being humble and realize you have an ego. Everyone has an ego, and it's not noble to say you can do it by yourself, because while you're saying I can do it by myself and you're not making anything of yourself, you're not helping the people you want to help. So embrace a network, embrace being humble, embrace other people's skill sets and other people's diversities and all this other stuff that you can bring into yourself, and just live more how we're supposed to live as a group, as a collective, as a tribe.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. There's a feeling of richness that comes from being helpful in others' lives. You know what I mean? And that seems to me to be beyond some way. You almost get to sit beside yourself when you do something cool for somebody else, that maybe it's just an insight that you have that they didn't have, or but there's something really beautiful about the idea of co-creating. And this is what leads me to this next idea that I'm curious about. What is the relationship between co-creation and abundance?
Co-creation and abundance. I suppose it's kind of, when you work with someone, again, you take what you know, what you experience, what you have, and when you work with someone else, you take their experiences, what they have, and their life journeys, essentially. And I think you find connections in that, and you find things you can relate to.
Yeah.
And with abundance, it's that you feel that everything is so limitless, like it doesn't end. So if you can meet more people and again feed off their energy and feed off their experiences and feed off their life journeys, then you start to open your perspective on things. I mean, I can't remember exactly where I picked this up, but there's a whole thing about, why do people sort of move to Dubai? Why do they live in, like, the rich people live in these really high top buildings on the 40th floor and stuff? It's not just a pure ego driven thing, but I mean, even if, I don't even know they realize it, but when you stand on something really tall and you look at that, the whole vastness, in your view is increased and you can see further than ever, you can see more, your perception is just opened basically to what you can see. That literally has a biological effect on the can't think of the word. Basically, the hormones in your body to make you feel a way of like life is sort of limitless. So when we're in these kind of boxes of our offices and stuff like that, we don't feel that sensation of abundance, that sensation of constant life and expanse and that sort of thing, because we're constricted. And
Yeah.
this is another thing, the most constricted thing we do to ourselves, which we don't realize the detrimental effect, is our phones. We take this whole expansive world we're given and we put it in a little box like this. And people spend, 5, 8
Right.
hours a day like this. It's insane to me. There's, like I said, the world is out there. And something that I realized the other day, I was coming back from the gym. I was on my bike, and I was coming back on my bike. I realized from point A to point B, I'm moving through the world. Like that as a concept, I was here and now I'm here. I was here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, here. But I'm literally moving through the world, a world that at one point, was built by the Romans and has been through Tudor times and all this sort of stuff. Like there's so much history and everything that I'm traveling through in that moment, and I'm part of history in that moment. But when I'm in my room and I'm sat on my computer or I'm sat on my phone, whatever it is, I'm just in this box and that's it. And that is where, sadly, the majority of us spend our lives, is putting ourselves in these boxes. And we wonder why we don't have these expansive minds. We wonder why we don't feel the sense of abundance. Like you have to, I said, move through the world, and moving with someone is so much more powerful than moving on your own. And yeah, there's a great saying. I think it's like, if you want to go far, go by yourself. If you want to go farther, go with someone else, or something like that. And I think that's very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, this idea. Another part of that too is, when you look at your phone, people are looking down. It doesn't seem like too long ago people were looking up at the stars. Like what, like it's a different mindset. Like I think posture and I think the way you move through the world, much like you said, has a radical effect on how you see the world. If you're
Yeah.
moving through the world, like, or being inspired by the stars, it's more, I think you're more inspired by looking up at the stars than looking at a map of the stars on your phone, or looking at a map of the stars through Hollywood or some bananas thing like that, like that. But it's interesting to think about how we define the way we move through the world. I've never thought about that. I thank you for putting it out there. It's fascinating to think about. What about inner dialogue? Like you talked about how you move through the world. Does
Mhm.
your inner dialogue have an effect on the way you move through the world?
Yes, and I'd say, how to put it, your inner dialogue can be incredibly powerful in the way that I think a lot of us, when we think about inner dialogue, we think about the
Mhm.
negative thoughts we kind of give ourselves. But again, I think awareness is powerful,
Right.
and over 90% of our thoughts are negative. That's how we're
Mm.
biologically wired. So people that go through and think, "Oh, I talk myself down all the time. I do this, and I want to do this," and my mind sort of says, "No, you're not capable of that. You're not smart enough." Whatever it is, I understand you're only working from a base level framework. You are no different to anyone else if you have those thoughts. Everyone has those thoughts. I said it's 90% of your thoughts are driven in that.
Right.
But what I want people to take away is you have to work incredibly hard and again, do boring things to give yourself a counterbalance for those 90% of negative thoughts. Because if only 10% of your thoughts are positive, then you're going to go through the world thinking that 9 out of 10 times I'm miserable, I'm self-deprecating, I tell myself I'm not worthy, and every now
Mm.
and again I'll have a good day. But you can increase that, but it comes from, yeah, having the awareness you've got 90% of thoughts, having like gratitude for, everything that exists in the world. And my inner thoughts have been great in the way that, well, recently, since, again, start getting the network together, having more awareness, looking into human psychology and all this sort of thing, recognizing that a day a day can be like completely different and it's all kind of on you. Like I appreciate the whole thing of self-accountability. I like that as a notion. I think it's important. But I think you can't have accountability if you don't have awareness.
Mm,
And so many people don't have awareness, and they walk through and they just think that they think a certain way that makes them feel a certain way, and that's what they resonate with. And you can take that control back, and it can be something as simple as you might say, I've tried reading books, I've tried this, and if you're like trying to read a book and you can't get your mind sort of focused enough, then I think okay, you're at too much an advanced level. A book is a very static activity, right? So your mind's probably going 1,000 directions. That's why you can't concentrate. Okay, so you need to take control of your mind back. You need to get into alpha state. You're probably in,
right.
beta or something. You get back in alpha. So again, with the abundance of information we have, go on YouTube, look up a video how to alpha state, beta state, wherever it is. Understand the brainwave states, because if you go back to the foundations, i.e., your mind, your body, your soul, and you start there, then you can make real changes in terms of you put yourself in a different mental state to allow yourself to read a book, do a course, and do these productive things that make you feel like you're moving in a direction, which is so important to feel like you're actually moving in the direction you want to be. I always say that for so much of my life, I wasn't even on a path. Now I'm on a path. I'm not where I want to be on the path, but just being on the path is huge because the path has a beginning and an end. But when you're not even on the path, that's when it's hard, honestly, when your life's just chaos and you don't know what you want to do, you don't know who you are, what your purpose in life is, why you're here, if you have any value whatsoever. I've
Mm,
been through all that, and
yeah,
that's a really tough time.
it is. I think on some level it's necessary. I think you have to go through there. I think you have to wander aimlessly for a little bit and be shaken up, or have the world instill a passion into you, or better yet, have your own passion revealed to you. It's like finding the holy grail within yourself. Like, oh my God, I really like this. And I love what you said about, you know, for me too, reading was something that I didn't really feel I knew how to do until I started listening to like some audiobooks. And like for me, I would have to be doing something and listening to an audiobook. And then I'm like,
Yeah,
whoa, this is how I learn. And then all of a sudden, after I did that for a while, then I could read. I'm like, okay, I get it. But you have to figure out how you learn. Because just because
yeah,
you sat in a class and somebody told you like a Pavlovian dog blowing whistles on you, like that doesn't mean that's how you learn. That's how some people learn. And guess what?
yeah,
If you don't learn like that, it doesn't mean you're dumb. In fact, it probably
yeah,
means you're smarter in different areas. Like we all learn different ways, but the easiest way to teach a bunch of people is just to show them one way. So that's what happened for a lot of us. But once you figure out how you as an individual learn, man, that lights a fire up in you, and all of a sudden it burns away that dead brush. It burns away those old ideas like you're not good enough because you start seeing something. Then you find that path. You're like, son of a gun, I was on this yellow brick road the whole time, man. Right?
And on that point about basically, so I'm neurodivergent. I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic, the same as Tom. No, sorry, I don't. I'm not sure if Tom is dyspraxic, but anyway. But the point is that I had a test. I went through school terrible, failed, failed, failed. Told I was lazy, told I was easily distracted, all over the place. So all through academically, absolutely terrible. Got to university and I was just sort of like, I've got to do something about this because I'm in my
Yeah.
first year university. The lads I'm working with are joking about how easy this is and how ridiculous this is, and I hope this gets harder. And I'm just going along with it, like, yeah. And I was struggling, honestly, I
Right.
was really struggling. So I got to my third year, and I had a test for dyslexia. So I was just sort of like, there's something not right in my brain. I have to, sort this out somehow because I'm going to fail. And when I had my test, I was dyslexic and dyspraxic, and on certain things, I think it was like um, cognitive process, memory, and a few other things. I basically got a score that said only 2% of the population would have got a score that low. So But the thing is, I found that incredibly empowering because my whole life I was like, I know I'm trying. I
Yeah.
know I've always loved to learn. It's been an absolute passion of mine, but I found it very hard. And when I had that awareness, as I said, that gave me power, and then that allowed me to say, okay, I've got a name for this thing. How do I address it? What does this thing? What's the research? What do we know about this thing that tells me that I would struggle? Ah, yeah. So I did struggle with my driving, and other people struggle with their driving. Ah, I do struggle with reading books, and these people
Mhm.
struggle with reading books. And I found a reason for this whole chaos in my life, and then I started to address that. And now, I mean, I went from uh, again, failing. I worked in like a bar 6 years ago after going to uni twice and all this lot. I was about 28, wondering what is my life. I'm now 36. I work in London, service design transition manager. I read typically a book a week. I can speed read. I've memorized like 80 countries and capitals and trying to get to 200. And I just give myself these kind of challenges.
Yeah.
Now, having that awareness that I'm not fixed, again, neuroplasticity, just look up that word and the
Mhm.
definition, and it's incredibly empowering because it tells you what you are today is not who you're going to be in 10 seconds from now. We are constantly
Yep.
evolving and expanding, and this goes back to that thing about moving through the world. Your data points of the way you can expand, it grows exponentially when you're out in the world because it is that unpredictability. Like even to the point of let's say you're at a networking event and you've never been in that room before, right? So you're working out the room, you're walking around, you've never met those people before. So all the conversations, you have to, there's no autopilot. Yes, you can do like certain things, you can, prepare your introductions, stuff like that. But if someone turns around and says, um, so do you like football, for example? You didn't know that question was coming. So you come up with an answer on the spot. Well, I do like football, I don't like football, why do you like football, why don't you like football? And you don't know what stuff's going to come in, and that is the most powerful thing for your brain is when it has to create new neural connectors and stuff from the information it knows, the information you've been given, to come up with something kind of in between.
Yeah.
And I just found that whole world just completely fascinating. I do like mind maps to replicate the sort of neural pathways and stuff. And yeah, it's an incredible thing when you learn about that. That changed my life, honestly. That and Benjamin Hardy, if you know him.
I'm not familiar with him. What was he? Has he written some books, or who is he?
Yeah, so Benjamin Hardy, he teamed up with his mentor and inspiration, Hardy. I can't remember the guy's name. Sorry, but yeah, so he's written several books. He was actually on my friend's podcast, Eddie McKay, on a Mission podcast, uh, and that's where I first heard him. And he was yeah, he just introduced me to neuroplasticity, told me about how we're not limited. He's written a book called Willpower is Not Enough. Basically
Mm.
talks about how our environments are so much more of a contributing factor to us getting stuff done than our willpower. Because if you sit here and you're like, no, I'm going to get this done, I believe myself, I'm going to push it, I'm going to do this and this, but your environment is distractions and overwhelm and all that willpower just gets sapped. So if you can put yourself in an environment which is positive and neutral and stress-free and all this sort of stuff, your willpower levels will maintain. People think willpower is like this endless resource. It's not, it's a reservoir. And it's consumed through every action you do. And it's micro and it's macro. You read a book, it consumes some of your willpower. However, if you read a book, maybe it consumes that much willpower, but sorry, well, I should say focus, not necessarily willpower, but read a book and consumes that much focus. But if you watch a YouTube video, it's like this much because the amount of information that you have to process is so much more. Does that make sense? So when we live in this is what they call a thing called TikTok brain. So people on TikTok, they they live in this sort of like dopamine addiction like this, and they're just getting this information just bang, 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 and it just overwhelms their brain. So that's when you come to me and say, hey, read this book. They're instantly just like, oh my God, that's like the most boring thing ever. Do you know what I mean? And no one started a business off watching, well, they may have started a business, but no one wrote a business plan off the back of a TikTok video. Like, you may get inspiration from it, but it's not nearly to the level of reading a book. I mean, Stephen Kotler talks about this of a book is possibly the best ROI you're going to get because it typically takes someone like 2 to 5 years to write a book, and then they consolidate that and they bring all the best points into about 400 pages, and you pay what, $12.99? That's pretty good. For 4 years of someone's consolidated information, or 5 years for $12.99. I think it's pretty good ROI.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Have you thought about writing a book?
It's strange. I'm actually going on a course on Wednesday to write a book. It's a woman that I met. I was on a podcast training, 3-day training event. I do a lot of courses in different disciplines, and I did three days of setting up a podcast. And this lady came there called Chloe Bison, and I don't know if I can promote a book. Can I do that?
Yeah, of course, man. What you got?
Literally just in my line, so it makes sense. So she's a self-published author, and she's got I think a marketing agency of some kind. So this is her book. Just write the damn book. Yeah. There's no nonsense, but the thing that I like about this, and more books are doing this nowadays, which they give you actionable steps. So it's not like you just passively read the book. And I'd advise to anyone actually, if you're going to read a book, don't put it in your head that it's a passive activity. It's not passive. It needs to be active. It needs to, if it's a book that doesn't have actionable steps in it, then you need to visualize what the book, put yourself in that person's shoes or feel that emotion of, if you're reading a book about entrepreneurship, for example, someone saying about smell the leather, being in a hotel, right? Take that, stop it, close the book, and just resonate with that just for a moment, because the more you can connect with that book or that story, whatever it is, the more impactful it is for you. It's not just about reading the information that goes in happy days. That's not how your brain works. It has to activate on multiple levels, and the more levels it can activate, the more potent it is. But yeah, so Chloe's doing a course on Wednesday, which basically will take all the stuff that I've done in the book, and then we'll run through it like in person. And yeah, my book is well, I won't talk too much about it, but it's basically just about, I guess, self-development, but it kind of, the whole idea of it is that when I read a book about so many other, successful people, entrepreneurs, and this sort of thing, it's how to describe it. It's not from a perspective that I can really resonate with, is my point. And I want to do something that someone could be like, I sound like that guy, or I'm like that guy, and I want to write the book for the person that is not the entrepreneur that's made it and they're reading a book out of many books they're reading. I want to write it for the person that works in a bar, that works in a coffee shop, that doesn't understand how to get inspiration and how to get those sensations. So all the stuff I talked about now about how biohacking, watch a YouTube video, do something outside of work for 1, 2, 3 hours, whatever it is. That's kind of the book I want to write. I want to write a book for me 10 years ago that I come across. That's what.
Yeah. You're the only person that I've heard well, as I'm listening to our conversation, we in the beginning we kind of talked about abundance a little bit. And I think there's some real unique bridges, although bridges is not the word I want to use. I think there's some real incredible similarities between your ideas in abundance and the way in which, when you took a test and found you were dyslexic, how the world changed. It's like, on some level, I think you're explaining the same things. It must have been interesting to have a diagnosis and then be like, son of a gun, here's how I do it. It's like all of a sudden the world opened up to you and like you got to see abundance. It's like almost like you were living in scarcity and you're like getting by, and then boom, abundance. Like I think that is what so many people need right now, Gary. Like the guy that's losing his job, or the girl that just, she got out of a relationship, or she just lost her job. Like so many of us, with the conditions of the world that we spoke about earlier, that's happening to everybody. And you've been through it like your whole life. It's almost like you've been trained for this, man.
I appreciate that. I started my first business. I was a property sourcer, and that basically the way that works is you work as an estate agent for the investor. So speaking with a lot of wealthy people, it's trying to source them properties, it's doing due diligence on the property and all the figures and all this sort of stuff, working out exit strategies. Now, while I enjoyed that, obviously, Simon Sinek, start with why. And again, a very, very powerful quote is there's two most important moments of your life, or days of your life, are the day that you're born and the day you find out why. And I really like that. And when I was doing the sourcing, I did it from a place of I want to make more money. And I've never been motivated by money, not really.
Right.
So I wasn't really motivated around that business. But in trying to do a 9 to 5 and do this property sourcing business when I finish work and reading books and all this sort of stuff, I found myself being incredibly overwhelmed, and I didn't have the time to do anything, and I was stressed and I burn out and all this sort of thing. So naturally, through me learning different ways to effectively manage my overwhelm and manage my anxiety and manage my understanding of, okay, how these foods affect me, and carbs and all this sort of thing, I then found a real passion for optimization and productivity. And then through that, I was like, hold on, I'm the guy that would leave the house and have to come back like 5 times because I would forget stuff. This was my mind. So me becoming this optimization productivity guy is kind of what I've known for my group. People message me and say, how do you stay so systemized? How do you stay so organized? And it's like, if you knew my history, like it's such an opposition to where I came from. But that's what I believe is very powerful in telling my story and living in a way that is aligned to that goal, to that path, right?
Yep.
Is because I do have a history of the exact thing I struggle with is now the thing I'm trying to teach. And
that's so awesome.
the passion I have for thing is amazing, because I said that it's boring, you have to do the boring thing to kind of get there. But I'm very grateful that my passion and the thing that I really enjoy is so like diverse and takes us in so many directions, and is one of the foundational pillars that I believe in, i.e. body, mind, and soul. So the mind is my kick. Like I love it. I love exploring it. I love understanding it more. I do go to the gym. I do this, but I'm not like I go there 3 days a week, but there are people that are way more about me than me about the human body and how it develops and grows. By the same with the mind, but I would definitely say that the mind is the one that I've really locked onto. The soul I'm coming onto more in my group. There's a lot of talk about that soul, energy, force, and things like this. But I always approach things from a very logical standpoint.
Right.
When I hear about someone that says manifestation, and I may be wrong, I put my hands up and say may be wrong, but from my own logical framework, when someone says, I want this thing to happen and I believed in it and it happened. Now, their take on that is the universe gave me this thing because I wanted it and I desired it. My take on it, given my understanding of how the mind works, is by you wanting that thing and resonating on it and dreaming on it and all this sort of stuff, you created yourself a memory, because your brain doesn't know the difference between memories and reality, or dreams and reality, sorry.
Right.
So you created yourself what the brain thinks is a memory. It doesn't have any other data points to link to that memory. It doesn't know where it came from. So then it spends all this time trying to bring you to a place to resolve that memory, to bring you back to that place, because the brain is an energy conservation machine, and it doesn't like this thought that's come in of you, I don't know, driving a Tesla or whatever. that it doesn't know where it came from, when it happened, whatever. So it's constantly searching to find those answers. So when you're having a conversation with someone and you recognize something that they say that might take you in that direction, your brain wants to take you in that direction. When you're going to a networking event, you're debating, should I go, should I not? Your brain will kick in and say, no, we definitely should go, because it sees, okay, this might answer that question.
Yeah.
And that's how I see manifestation. And that's how I have to find the logical way to explain it, because I'm not quite in that energy, in that space of the universe and energy and transfer will just happen. I'm not there yet. I hope to be, because it's incredibly interesting field, and I have a lot of friends that are, and they're very happy. So there's definitely something in it.
That should all be in the book, man. That's a fascinating way to interpret the meaning and interpret direction and interpret motivation. Like, that's a brilliant and beautiful way to look at it. I've never heard anybody describe it that way, man. That's freaking awesome, man. I love it. Have you ever thought, like, what about, I'm sure in London there's schools for kids that have dyslexia, man. Maybe you could even help out like a version of you 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's something that I'll take on board. My issue is, at the moment, is I take on far too much than I can handle already.
Agreed.
So I said, I started at a point where I was just work
Yeah.
a job. And this is the thing, when I was 24, I was going to get sacked from my job working in a bar, because I couldn't process working stuff through the till fast enough.
Right.
Yeah, that's where I started from. And then over time, I've improved myself and done self-development stuff, and I've gone up, and I've done specific cognitive training as well. And that's allowed me to take on more.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and I think we all kind of have this to an extent, is when I'm able to do more, I'll then fill that gap. I won't just leave myself a gap to process, a gap to enjoy life, all that sort of thing. I just fill the gap.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, I have my full-time job. I want to start my coaching practice. I work for a homeless charity. I'm a sales agent for 2 companies, one for sustainable energy, one for cybersecurity. So I try to read a book a week. Got a couple of courses on the go, and I try and go to a networking event every week. And yeah, it's a
You're
lot.
pretty busy.
Yeah, yeah. But this the thing, though. As I said, I genuinely have a passion for learning, and it's not a thing of chasing the shiny coin. It's a thing of, the world has existed for thousands of years. I'm going to be here for 90. I know I don't have time to learn absolutely everything, but I would like to learn, yeah, a lot.
Yeah. There's something contagious about a person who is passionate for living, man. I think you embracing that. That's awesome. You had mentioned some psychology that you were. Is there a certain philosopher or a certain branch of psychology that you gravitate towards?
Um, Obviously you have like the big names like Nietzsche. Now there was some that I came across that's actually, there was 3 of the big kind of mind people. There was Nietzsche, or philosophers, sorry. Nietzsche. You have to name me one now. There's like 3. Nietzsche.
How about who wrote the Red Book? Carl Jung. That seems to be my branch.
Yeah,
Carl
Jung.
Jung,
Yeah.
Whitehead, like that branch there. But
They
I think
there was
he's a contemporary of Nietzsche, I think.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, there was 4 of them, but 3 of them are like really famous, and there was this guy that
Maybe
wasn't.
Freud. Was he in there?
Freud, yeah, yeah. I think that
Right?
might be it. Freud, Nietzsche, and Jung, right? But then, and they're like the godfathers of philosophy. And then there was this other guy who was not as known, but his thoughts and his theories and everything were like in polar opposite to the other 3. It was really strange. I came across it a while ago. But no, for the Pacific philosophers and stuff like that, and psychology, I haven't necessarily studied it. It's
Mhm.
more just as a I think it's incredibly powerful to understand the human condition more.
Yeah.
And I look at it from what's going on kind of today, because things obviously move so quickly. So people like Benjamin Hardy, he's a neuroscience professor of some kind, I believe. So I like him. Oh, Dan Hardy, sorry, was the other author I was trying to get to with books.
Yeah.
Um, Stephen Kotler is a great professor on flow research, so getting in
Mm.
flow state. So yeah, my research, my authors are more around present day people that are entrepreneurs, business people, the old school guys, the big philosopher types. No, I haven't looked into too much. That level of reading to understand, their works, I think is probably quite a stretch at the minute. Like I've got a book, Sapiens, which I haven't read yet.
No,
But
Yuval Noari.
yes, yeah. So I haven't looked at that one yet, but yeah, I want to get around.
Just read Gun, Germs, and Steel. I think it's better. It's my opinion.
Is it Gun,
But
Germs, and Steel?
yeah, I think that in some ways, this is just me. I think that Noel kind of ripped off Gun, Germs, and Steel. And it's just me being a crusty old guy over here in Hawaii. But like when I read those together, everyone's like, Sapiens is so awesome. And I'm like, have you read Guns, Germs, and Steel? Because it kind of sounds like he just changed a few things around right there.
Oh, yeah,
Just
I'd
my
never heard
opinion.
it, so that may be
Yeah,
true.
you'll love it. It's super awesome. It's super awesome.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, what's your take on the flow state, man? Like that's something that I have found really intriguing lately. And it's been coming up a lot in a lot of the conversations I have, whether it's talking to people that are on the edge of technology or people that a lot of neurodivergent people I've found have embraced this flow state. And it almost reminds me of like the power of now. But what do you think
Hmm.
about the flow state? When you think of the flow state, what do you think of? Like what's going on, or how do you feel, or what are your thoughts about it?
So it's the thing is that flow state is something we can sort of get into. And again, I'm very appreciative that people have done the research to put it in a concise format which we can understand it more. I think Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is the
Mm,
godfather of flow, and it's about, do you know where like you go to work and you just finish the work day and you think, God, that was amazing. I got so much done and everything just went fine and I didn't have any reservations. I didn't get distracted. I just did what I needed to do and I walked out and that was amazing. That's kind of what it is. And people kind of think, oh, I just had a good day. When you
right.
actually analyze it, you'll probably find that you set up certain things in that day to allow that to happen. So flow doesn't just happen, it's when a certain amount of things come together in congruence to give you a result that you kind of want. So the way I describe it is like all the lights are green. So if you're
Mm,
traveling through traffic and all the lights are green,
right. That's a good one.
so you're not stuck in traffic, there's no red lights, there's no crazy person that ran out in front of the car, that sort of thing. And it's very rare in that sense, very rare that all lights are green and you just get from point A to point B. And that's the thing, if all the lights are green, you just get to where you want to get to in the quickest possible time without any interruptions, without any distractions, without any blockers, whatever. And it's all about getting in flow state. There's a guy, I can't remember his first name, but something Silver, Dr. something Silver,
Mhm.
and he talks about the Silver method, but it's basically getting into alpha. So you have different brainwave states: alpha, theta, beta, gamma, maybe zeta. I'm not too sure. But the state that you want to be in is alpha. And the way that I've heard alpha state described is that you are locked into what you're doing. You're singularly focused. That like nothing else exists. You're just doing this thing. And the thing is, when they measure people that are in this state and they're doing work in this state, they can literally, their output is literally higher than someone that has more time than them, but is not in that state.
Mm,
So in that way, this is
mm,
why the first product that I want to launch as a coach is the Masterpiece Day: achieve more in a day than you could in a week, because When you're in this state of mind, you can have, let's say, 3 hours, but you'll produce what this person produced in 8 hours, in 3 hours. Because when you're in a flow state, let's say, for example, if your output, if you're just working away and you're like, okay, so what's going to happen? You've got a 5 hour day, an 8 hour day. I'm going to start my day. I'm going to write this. Let's say for your example, George.
Yeah.
So you're going to start the day. Right. I've got to type up some notes for this podcast that I'm doing. So I'm gonna write. So who's the guest? I'm gonna research the guest. Right, that's gonna take me 20 minutes. Then I'm going to put that all down in terms of the research I got back. Then I'm gonna see what sort of questions I might be able to ask them. So maybe that's like an hour to think of my questions, and that's obviously kind of how your day is gonna go. If you're in flow, then as I said about the whole task switching thing and multitasking thing, yes, you're going to jump from the whole research, the questions to etc. But those transitions are going to be so flawless, and
Mm.
everything you do at each one of those points are going to be so flawless. You're not going to stop because you know that. Well, you're in this flow state. You don't want to stop. You don't want to get distracted. You don't want to have a water break. You don't want to take a piss. You don't want to do anything. You're
Yeah.
just locked in, and it's not. There's no effort to it. It's just your natural state. And what I find so incredibly powerful about this whole thing is that a lot of people try to, like, I need to get motivated. I need to do this work. I need to force myself to do this work. Is a term I hear a lot, and it shouldn't be like that. And when you actually change, as I said, your brainwave patterns to be aligned with working, to be aligned with achieving, and aligned with creating, it comes so effortless because you're in a brainwave state that's conducive to that work. So it's not this big effort, this work, this hardship that you have to put yourself through. You're just doing what your brain wants to do, which I think is amazing.
Man, you explained that so well. It speaks volumes of the people we see and admire that are great at doing something and they make it look effortlessly. Like that, you've really nailed exactly how that's possible. And it's when we factor in the lesson you taught us on neuroplasticity, it would seem that once one found their why, their second why, then the act of neuroplasticity would reinforce that behavior and they would just get better and better and better at it. They'd be able to slip into it and notice it and man, that's the secret. I think that's the secret sauce, man. I hope that people can find that thing that's calling to them, that's calling them to the flow zone, man. Like, can you imagine when everyone in your community is able to tap into that? Like, I think it's coming, Gary. I think that the fact that people are beginning to vocalize it and understand it, like, that's the emergent of it, right?
Yeah, 100%. As I said, it's the information's there, but there's so much stuff going on, you
Yeah.
just don't know where to put. And
Yes.
actually, generally, one of the biggest basically taxes on your brain is clarity.
Mm.
Because if you just had clarity, you imagine a world where you had clarity, where you know exactly what I need to do today to get me to tomorrow, and tomorrow I'm going to do this thing, and then that's going to take me to this point, and ever, etc. That doesn't, like, it does exist, but it takes work and effort and a certain amount of contribution to get to clarity. Clarity
Yeah.
is not given. So yeah, clarity is like a big thing. And again, in flow, you have clarity. I know what I need to do, how I need to do it, etc., etc. The mind just opens up and it just aligns. But what you said there as well is very true about people come together in flow, because there is actually a thing known as group flow. So you can have your singularly focused, thing from you doing your own work. However, you can have flow as a group and benefit from the group's collective flow, by being around people that, again, are aligned, people that follow your principles, people that have your values. And this is why being in a network is so important. So when you have a team of people working on a project and they're all in flow, I mean, yeah, I watched the film the other day, Oppenheimer.
Mm.
with Cillian Murphy. And although that wasn't really talked about in the film, I kind of imagine a group of scientists and engineers working together to create this bomb that they needed, for this war efforts kind of thing. And if they get it wrong, they could potentially destroy the world. That was like the narrative. And they have a certain time to do it. And all these sort of things are coming in to bring these people together for this collective purpose that's bigger than them. That's another big thing as well, I think, that people
Yes.
forget is doing things that are bigger than yourself is a very good motivating factor, because with our own selves, okay, I want to do this for me because it gives me X result. Great. But
Right.
if you don't really care about yourself enough, like a lot of us, we don't. Human nature is to care about other people more than ourselves. So if you're not doing it for you, do it for someone else. Do it for your mum. Do it for your wife. Do
Yes.
it for your kids. Like, use that as your motivation, and that will take you far greater than, again, if you don't believe in yourself, you maybe won't do it for yourself. But with that film and them all come together with this, all these factors and the time constraints and the criticality of it and what it was going to mean for the world, I believe that they were working as a unit in a more, a sort of a flow type thing because of all those factors. And again, that wasn't mentioned, but that is just something that I picked up when I was watching the film, that those engineers and those scientists would have to be working in such a tight level of such tight direction, where if one person was off and this person had missed their figures and this person didn't give the reports when they needed to, then it all falls to pieces. And I think, yeah, there are certain teams like that on certain projects that will naturally fall into that. But it becomes harder because of the world we live in, and again, the distraction and stuff. People don't acknowledge how bad that stuff is. Like, now, I think, I don't know if you've seen it, but Facebook and TikTok are in. It's not House of Commons. So what in England's House of Commons, in America, is it like the Senate committee or something? So yeah,
Yeah.
they're in the Senate. Every time I say that, I think of Star Wars, uh, but yeah, they're in front of the Senate committee, or the whatever your judicial system is, basically on trial because there's kids that have killed themselves because of these apps and because of this reality that it creates. It's not reality in terms of body perfection and stuff with Instagram, and yeah, these social networks have laws protecting them from ever being sued, and these are finally being taught into question, and people finally starting to talk about how damaging this stuff is, because it is. And I think it's one of those things, when you understand how damaging it is, you understand, dopamine receptors and how wildly they are out of sync with where they should be in terms of a base level, safe level. um yeah, the new generation is going to have a tough time, fortunately.
Yeah. I got some thoughts there, but I want to talk a little bit more about the group flow state, because I never really thought about it from that angle before. But not only is it probably true in a scientific setting, but just look at all the sports teams that play. I don't really watch a whole lot of sports, but I'm familiar with sports teams that become dynasties, and there's this
Mm.
certain sort of, you know, mentality where people can just know where the ball's going to be at, or you'll hear the guy like, I just knew he was going to be there, so I threw it to him, or I just passed the ball to him because I knew he could head it into the goal from there,
Yeah.
And it's this sort of collective muscle memory where we can all be together, like we just know what's going to happen. And if we're being honest, I bet you everyone listening to this at some point in their life has been with a friend or been with a loved one and was like, I know what they're going to say, or I know they're going to say this, or I know that they like that. And if we take it one step further, there's a great book by, dang it, now I forgot the guy's name. I think it's something Chris Ryan. And he talks about the way in which grasshoppers become locusts. Like grasshoppers swarm when they reach a certain critical mass, they fundamentally change. They fundamentally change their body shape and they become locusts. And it's not that far fetched from the idea of mob mentality. I think that kind of gets a bad rap. Like, yeah, there can be a mob mentality, but if that's true, couldn't there be something instead like a God mentality, instead of a mob mentality? Maybe there'd be a God mentality where we get together as a group and we go, you know what? Let's do this other thing, and I'm sure that's how movements get started. And you're right. There's so many distractions. Like, we're so easily taken away from the very beginnings of this new form of collective flow state that we don't even get a chance to be born sometimes. It blows my mind to think about, man. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, that's awesome to think
Yeah,
about. Thank you.
of course. I mean, I'm not going to press Vince spend words forever, but I have heard basically people reiterate things about we're all connected on a biological
Yes,
level, like, so,
agreed.
single cell organism, that sort of stuff. And I do believe there's some truth in that. And again, it's that thing of we are miracles. Power we hold is great. I mean, if you think about someone like Elon Musk, for example, people look at him as this genius, incredible person, and
Yeah,
he absolutely is.
sure.
But he's made of the same things you are. He's got a brain, he's got blood, he's got bones, he's got muscle fibers. It's just that I mean, yes, and he might have a certain measure of um, extra intelligence or, whatever it is, genius level, but people need to stop thinking of themselves as I could never be that, or
That's right.
that's so far beyond me, sort of thing. Again, we're all made of the same stuff. We just put ourselves in situations in different environments, um, and it creates less and less of us because, less and less people like Elon Musk, because most of us are just trying to get by, and we
Yep.
don't have that grandiose thought for ourselves. So he actually said he wants to basically build another world on Mars, I believe. And people sort of think he's crazy, but what you've got to recognize is I don't think he even classes himself as being successful because he hasn't, reached Mars yet. And people think that's mad. Or how could Elon Musk not think he's successful with things he's done? But his perception or his perspective on the height of success, the height of achieving, is literally out of this world. It literally leaves the planet. That's where his mind is. So all the stuff that he does on Earth, no matter how fantastical and amazing, how much billions it raises, whatever,
Mm.
it doesn't mean a jot to him. And in the same way, I think it was on Twitter or something, but there's something that happened recently. I think his stock dropped by something, but basically he lost a few £1 billion in like a couple of days,
Yeah.
which to the average person is just such an insane number to even fathom. But to him, it's only because that's the level that he operates at. So it's like if you have, let's say, £80 billion or dollars, let's say, and you lose 2 million. Well, that's the equivalent. It's not wholly equivalent in terms of
Right.
the math I'm doing, but let's say if you had £80,000 and you lost 900, you still have £80,000, or you still have like 70,000 XXXX, right? But that's your frame of reference to say, oh, I've lost that. It sucks, but it hasn't really affected me. It's the same with him and his like billions. Yes, he lost like 2 billion, but he's got X
Right.
amount. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
So it's well, not all, but so much comes down to your perception and your perception versus reality, I guess I would say. But your perception kind of creates reality, and you can change your reality by changing your perception quite quickly. So that's been a big one for me, and that's why I did my gratitude journal every night, seeing things I didn't see. Because when you do like gratitude, it's not just about being thankful for something; it's about stopping and thinking about things that you pass by you every day, you don't think about. So, say an orange, right? Something very simple like an orange. If you sit there and you like just don't do anything else, just sit with an orange for like 10 minutes and just slowly open it up. And you see as you break away the skin, all the little fibers and skin like just tear away from the orange, and you just open it up. And if it's a really hard orange, it might be harder to break apart, but you just tear it away slowly and see all the little fibers break away and all the nutrients that run through those fibers and the color of the orange, and is it pale, is it dark. But then you rip off the peel and everything and then put that to one side, and then actually take apart each individual segment, and then within those segments it's got all these fibers and everything, and it's soft, and you can look inside it, and it's transparent, and you can see the seedlings inside, and you can bite into it and you can rip it apart and see all these like things sort of open up like that, or you can just bite it in half and let the juice drop. Like an orange, I could like dissect an orange for like a freaking hour if you just take the time to recognize like there is so much beauty in like nature and fruit and all these things that are just being created from nature essentially. Um, and when you have that awareness of things like that, you don't think so, your life's so bad kind of thing. But yeah, gratitude's very important, and just resonating with the simplest things, and just take something quite innocuous and just spend like 10 minutes with it can be really interesting.
Yeah, it's you can learn a lot from an orange or just nature. Like just the way you described that, which was beautifully done. Like there's so much happening, peeling it away from the skin and watching the little like you can learn almost every part of science from that. Like if you just start asking why is that, and it's like it's almost like nature's talking to us and like, hey, like trying to hey, come here, you want to learn something, peel this orange, or what do you think came first, the color orange or the fruit orange?
That's a good question.
My
Oh,
daughter
well
gave me
done.
that one. I did the same thing you did. I was like, it's pretty good. I
I
don't know. Why do they call a lemon a
did-
yellow? It's sunny, huh?
I've got one about colors. So when people say they don't believe in aliens,
Okay.
my sort of tests for that is I say, okay, describe to me a new color. No, what do you mean? But well, you know that aliens don't exist, right? Yeah, they don't exist. Okay, so describe to me a new color. I can't. Okay, so if you can't describe to me a new color, how the hell are you going to tell me that a life form doesn't exist outside of our yeah? Because your only points of
Right.
reference are
That's a good one.
everything from the day you're born to now. So you have no points of reference from aliens other than movies and TV shows and theory. So you can't say with, I mean, the same way I can't say with any
Right.
conviction there's no God. I can only say that from my own life experience and my environment and etc that I don't have a reason to have a faith, but I don't denigrate anyone that does because their life experience is different from mine.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of human beings. But yeah, orange or color orange. I think the orange came first. We didn't have a word for it. Best way to put it. So obviously the world was born, all these things came out of the ground and they grew and they fell off and etc. And then people started to eat them and just see how things went. But I do find language in itself fascinating
Yeah.
in terms of,
Yeah.
well, you do wonder, like, why did we have a language? Because there
Mhm.
must have some point been a universal language, one language. And then for some reason, in different regions, people started to call things different things. Why did we do that? It's made the world so much more complicated.
There's a great book called The Gutenberg Galaxy by Marshall McLuhan, and he talks about the printing press and how it gave us ideas like exact repeatability. And that's I think that you know what, you can go back to Timaeus and read I think in Timaeus there's a section with Thoth who is often talked about with the emerald tablets. But in this in this particular section, they talk about the invention of writing. And it's really a cool section. And he talks about writing. God, I forgot. All I can remember is the name of Thoth and Timaeus. And long story longer, he tells his God, like, and I'm totally paraphrasing here, oh, great leader of God, of Ra, or whatever, I've created this new technology called writing. It's going to make humankind so much more able to exist in the world. And the God laughs at him and he's like, oh, Thoth, my paragon of invention. First off, it is very foolhardily for the inventor of a technology to say what it's going to do, because that never happens. And the second thing is, while it's a wonderful technology, this idea of writing is going to have the opposite effect. Writing is going to make the human condition weaker, because people will no longer need to have the experience. Instead, they will have the written language of an experience, and that takes away from. But I'm totally butchering all of it right there. But it gets back to this idea of language. Like, language is but an echo of the lived experience that someone does. This conversation we've had today is, language doesn't do it justice. And I think in the psychedelic realm, you bump up against this thing that's ineffable. And like that is, or no, there's another great book called Dynamics of Faith. And they talk about symbolism, symbols being more than language, because symbols actually participate in the thing they're pointing to, versus a sign that just kind of points to the thing. But kind of bird walking there, man. But I love language too, Gary. And I got to tell you, this conversation, this whole time has been fascinating to me. Like, we've just blown through an hour and a half, just like this. And before I let you go though, Gary, first off, thank you for everything.
Of course.
You got to come back, because I'm kind of bumping up against a hard break, but I have lots of other questions about dyslexia and learning. And, do you see, like, I have lots of other questions, and if I start them now, I won't stop. So, but before I let you go, where can people find you? What do you have coming up, and what are you excited about?
So I'm just on like social media. LinkedIn, Facebook is probably the ones I use the most. What I've got coming up, so obviously doing my book writing course. I do want to get my my Masterpiece Day sort of program sorted. There's lots of parts to it. There's gamification and working out different frameworks and avatars, and there's a lot to it. And what am I excited about? I'm excited for this year in the way that I've never been. People would say, write down your goals, your visions, and everything like this. And I've done it many times, but I've never been in a position where it could actually all come to fruition. I spent a lot of time networking, growing my connections. I want to go to Dubai for a visit and see how I feel, and then potentially move there. And then I need to work out, okay, how much do I need to earn to live in Dubai? How much do I need to bring in a month, etc. What are my savings, this sort of thing. So a lot of that's coming together. I'm up for 2 awards at the HNC Awards event, which is on Friday.
Yeah, congratulations, man.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. And again, it's absolutely wild. The last one I went to was so life-changing and opened my eyes to so many things. And now to not just be going again, but to be nominated for the awards is incredible. And yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. I need to do my mind maps for it to work out what I'm going to say and everything. Everything's lastminute.com at the moment. But yeah, excited to be alive, excited for this time, excited for each and every day, to be honest, because there's so much opportunity that can come in. You just never know. And that only increases the more you allow yourself to believe in life and let other people in that have a similar mindset and a vision. And even like, to this interaction we've had today, coming from our mutual friend Tom, who I met at an event, who we cracked on with, and here I am speaking with someone in America. These are the wonderful ways in which life can take you if you just open to it. So it's been amazing for me also. I appreciate your time, George.
Man, you're brilliant. And I love talking to you. And shout out to Tom. We love you, buddy. Thank you for everything. And we'll hang on briefly afterwards, Greg, because I still want to just talk to you briefly afterwards. But to everyone who participated today and is listening to this today or in the future, go down to the show notes and I'll put Gary's links to Facebook and LinkedIn will be down there, and you can reach out to him and you can pick his brain, and I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. So that's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you have a beautiful day. Aloha.
Pleasure.